The tyranny of the algorithm continues. At PMQs today, the SNP leader Angus Robertson asked a pointed question about a proposed domestic violence bill. Link below. To save you the pain of having to suffer the sanctimonious Mr. Robertson, I haven't linked to a video of his question, but to Hansard. The relevant part of his drone ran thus. This Friday, the House will consider a bill on the Istanbul Convention. We know that ministers have been working hard with my honourable friend, the member for Banff and Buchan, who has cross-party support for her bill. Given the importance of the issue and the Prime Minister's personal commitment, which she has outlined again today, will she join me in encouraging members to support the bill and discourage any attempts to use parliamentary wrecking tactics to stop it? The wrecking tactics he is referring to is this, link below, i.e. Philip Davis MP's attempts to have the bill made non-sex specific. Quite why this is a problem for Mr. Robertson, or indeed anyone in Parliament, is not obvious. Surely, if you are a victim of domestic violence and you happen to be a man, then you should have the full protection of the law. Well, yes, or rather no. At which point, let us go over to iNews, link below. Oh, and what do we see? A picture of Emma Watson, who is promoting this legislation along with a number of charities and NGOs. Hang on, my scam detector seems to have gone off. Hang on, where's the button? Right, so scrolling down the article, we come to this mob, I See Change, who describe themselves as the I See Change campaign is a grassroots group made up entirely of volunteers and supported by many organisations from across the women's sector. And a clue to where these bunny ears, volunteers, close bunny ears come from is to be found on the printed placards, on the publicity photos on their site. So, what is Million Women Rise? Link below. And who is supporting them? And in all likelihood, I See Change, since this is clearly another charity scam and a way of passing tax-free money around for no good purpose. Link below. Right, so it's a bunch of unions, refugee support charities and women's groups. Quelle surprise. And it would explain this. Link below. The Istanbul Convention is the first European treaty specifically targeting violence against women and domestic violence. It sets out minimum standards on protection, prevention, prosecution and the development of integrated policies. Countries ratifying the treaty are obligated to protect and support victims of such violence. They must also establish services such as hotlines, shelters, medical services, counselling and legal aid. And how marvellous that the charities supporting the bill and no doubt providing the volunteers for I See Change will also no doubt be providing the hotlines, shelters, medical services, counselling and legal aid. Gosh, it's almost like a plan. Now, before you stamp your feet and start downvoting this video because you are trapped in the false narrative of The Independent and its related algorithm, I suggest you go and look at this video by Erin Pitsey, link below, who founded the first refuge for battered women in Chiswick in the 1970s. But back to the iNews puff piece. It can still be downvoted and filibustered. During the second reading, Mr Davis made an extraordinary attempt to block the bill through filibuster by speaking for 78 minutes. On Wednesday it emerged the self-proclaimed Menonist has made further attempts to thwart the bill with a series of amendments. Now, if you watched the earlier video, you will know that Mr Davis's objection to this legislation is that around 25%, and in some cases more, depending on the crime being referred to, of the people who should be covered by this legislation are not, for the simple reason that they have external gonads. As for Mr Davis being a Menonist, is that even a thing? Aside from Menonist being an obvious algorithmical slur, I do know that he made a speech at the International Conference of Men's Issues, link below, about the inherent sexism in the legal system, which is in itself one reason why those behind this charity scam might object to protecting men and boys under this proposed legislation, because were they to do so, it would see women being sent to prison. And if you fancy a laugh, I See Change has expressed its utter disdain for the MP and insisted this is no time to play politics. But hang on. Erin Pitsey also spoke at that conference, link below. And let us not forget that she was driven out of the country by death threats from precisely the people behind this legislation. She also had the refuge she established taken over, and she was forced out by precisely the kind of people behind this legislation. And as she points out, she was running it on charity handouts and the goodwill of the community. The person running it now is getting £250,000 a year, and when you add in the rest of the staff, that one house on its own is big business. Multiply it across all of the refuges across the country, and you can see that there's a heck of a lot of money involved. And if you really fancy a laugh, all of this money is almost being spent on these refuges is almost completely useless. Because, as Miss Pitsey has pointed out, and every piece of research not commissioned by charity vested interests or the #equality branch of government has confirmed that the feminist model of domestic abuse, of which this latest bill forms part, is damaging to families, women and society. And of course, the real reason this bill will not protect men and boys is that it will A. cost money, B. require genuine and meaningful change within society, and C. raise questions about why NGOs, like for instance Amnesty International, excluded half of the human race from this legislation in the first place. Also, a sane society might also ask questions about why these charities and NGOs don't pay taxes, particularly when they are using legislation such as this and their political lobbying power to generate business for themselves, all of it tax-free. But please, don't say this too loud, or the delicate Emma Watson will be forced to take to her bed again.